Hello, and welcome to the Keep It Local Maine podcast, where we tell the stories of local business owners, artists, and entrepreneurs, and learn more about what they do, who and what inspires them, their challenges, successes, and more. My name is Todd Regalinski.
And I am Kimberly Regalinski.
And we are the publishers of Keep It Local Maine, a magazine that helps to showcase local businesses to the people in and around their communities. Thank you for tuning in to our weekly podcast that you can subscribe to on most streaming services such as Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, Google Podcasts, and others. You can learn more about us at keepitlocalmaine.com and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube through the links in the show notes. In this episode, we'll be talking with Deirdre Frey from Vet at Your Door. Deirdre earned a BS in Operations Research and Industrial Engineering from Cornell University. After working for a few years as a computer programmer, she decided to fulfill her lifelong dream of becoming a veterinarian. She obtained her doctorate in veterinary medicine from the University of Pennsylvania, and in 2011, she achieved her other lifelong dream of living in Maine. She started Vet at Your Door in 2015 in order to create a low-stress, high-quality veterinarian experience for pets and their parents in the comfort of home, while also providing a top-notch work experience for her incredible staff. Dr. Frey lives in Carrabassett Valley, Maine with her husband, 3 children, and standard poodle Greta. And now, a quick word from our sponsor. Weather is getting warmer and it's project planning season, which means you should call Maine Commercial Contracting, your locally owned choice for residential and commercial services in southern Maine. They'll be there for that new driveway, walkway, or excavation for your home and for your business with parking lot paving, road milling, heavy hauling, and competitive commercial pricing. So when you need your project done right and on your timeline, get a hold of the company with the appetite for excellence and the skills to see it through. Call Maine Commercial Contracting at 207-391-0540 for a free estimate or find them online at mainecommercialcontracting.com.
Welcome to the show, Deirdre. We're so glad to have you here today.
Well, thanks for having me. It's an honor.
This is great. So can you tell us what is Vet at Your Door and what was your inspiration in starting this business?
Sure. So Vet at Your Door is a house call veterinary practice that serves much of Maine. And we do wellness services, sick visits, hospice care, acupuncture, and euthanasia, all in the comfort of home. And so I was inspired by many things, I think, to start this business. I started it in 2015, and I was super burned out, I guess, in general practice. I had 3 little kids at the time, or actually 2 little kids at the time, a third sort of on the way. And I was sort of having trouble with the 15-minute appointments, and oftentimes several exam rooms were booked. And I was really having trouble witnessing that human-animal bond that we, all fell in love with as kids, like that I fell in love with as a kid that made me want to do this in the first place. And it was just really hard to witness it because the animals and the people were so stressed. In the veterinary office, there's definitely the dog that will be happy doing anything just as long as there are people around. But a lot of cats and many dogs do get stressed in the veterinary office, as I'm sure you guys know.
Yeah.
And I just was really having a hard time and kind of questioning why I went into this field in the first place. And I looked around and it wasn't just me. The veterinary industry has a very high incidence of anxiety, depression, suicide. We're about 4 times more likely to die by suicide than other professions. And so I was witnessing this and seeing this in our industry. And I'm like, what is going on? We're all a bunch of nice people who love animals. Why are we so miserable? And so I just was like, what could I do to kind of go back and start to fall in love with this profession again, a way that I could really witness the human-animal bond again, really enjoy my job, and then also solve this challenge of these really stressed out animals and owners in the veterinary practice. And so that's where I got directed towards house call. And it's by no means a new concept. I mean, way back when, that's how human medicine happened. And there were a couple of house call veterinarians doing it, and I just decided to give it a go. And so I did it, and, it was really amazing. I absolutely loved it because just by the nature of coming into the home, people get to know you better and you get to know them better. And the longer I do this, the more I realize that it's mostly about the people Of course, the animals as well, but it's a lot about the people. And when you can really truly form a bond with them, you can really practice your best medicine, and the animal benefits the most.
Yeah.
And so I just absolutely loved it. And I wanted to not only just have me, so I was happy because I could really make my own schedule because I was working out of my home. And so with my kids, I could, pick them up from school or be there at the school bus or drop them off at an appointment. And I could just sort of schedule around that. And that was really an amazing thing as far as my stress level went. And so I really wanted to be able to offer this to other veterinary staff members. So not only veterinarians, but also veterinary staff, veterinary technicians, veterinary assistants, receptionists, et cetera, are all suffering from these same issues of burnout. And so I really wanted to grow it for those reasons, as well as to be able to offer it to more families throughout Maine so that they could enjoy this way of practice where everybody is sort of less stressed.
Yeah. That's great.
And so, I just have grown it since 2015. And, we now have 6 doctors throughout Maine and soon to be 8. And we're just growing, and the response has just been incredible.
That's fantastic.
That's amazing. Now, the first question that I would have, I guess, is kind of a logistical question. Where do you kind of run up against the limitations? Because I imagine there are some limitations of doing a home visitation service. How often do you run up against those limitations, and kind of what are those?
Yeah, so we can't do everything, it just by the nature of being in the home, we don't have a big surgical suite, for example, that we can use. So we do work with many hospitals throughout Maine, what I call brick and mortar hospitals, which are the regular kind of veterinary practice. And we've developed wonderful relationships with them and with many of them. And so what we'll do is we will work with them to either, send them for surgery to these practices, or if somebody has a veterinarian that they love that works at a brick and mortar practice, then they will just continue using them. For things like surgery. When their animal's really sick, they need to be hospitalized, they'll sometimes use those veterinarians for that. And then we also, for x-rays, for example, we utilize our partner hospitals to basically just have the owner drop off their dog or cat, and then the brick and mortar hospital will take the x-rays and then they'll email them to us. So we get to basically keep the case essentially and interpret the x-rays. So we have really great relationships with those hospitals, many hospitals throughout Maine where we have this relationship. So that's great.
Wow, that's awesome that you've managed to build those relationships and the business itself in that short amount of time. Yeah.
The response has been incredible.
That's great. So the second thing I really wanted to ask about is because you've had a really interesting journey to where you are now. So in just kind of reading your biography and things, and you went from engineering to veterinarian. Now, how did that all happen?
Yeah. So I went to college thinking I wanted to be a vet. So I've really wanted to be a vet my whole life. And I went to college. I was pre-vet, and the classes were just, the college that I went to was a big college, and the classes that I went to were enormous. And essentially I got weeded out. Like, I didn't do well. And so I was also probably partaking in too much social activity as well at the time. I'll say, is that a nice way of saying it?
I cannot believe that would happen in college.
No, never.
My goodness.
But anyway, and so I just really didn't do well. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get into vet school with these grades. And so I really was sad about it. But then I was like, you know what? I also really love computers. I love math, and I love building things. And so I looked around at the different majors of what I could maybe do. And this operations research and industrial engineering degree was there. And engineering by no means was a cakewalk, but it was a change. It was something that it wasn't necessarily something I had thought about doing. But then the more I thought about it, the more I really loved it. I loved finance. I loved business, and a lot of these concepts that you learn with this type of engineering, logistics, efficiency, things like that really just played to my brain. And I absolutely loved it. And so when I graduated, I got a job actually as a computer programmer in a consultancy called Sapient Corporation. And I learned so much. It was like right during the dot-com boom, everybody, playing ping pong, down the hall in between coding and stuff like that. And it was just so fun. And it was really young company and really smart people. I learned a lot about process and how to accomplish projects and talk to different businesses about what they wanted to build. And then I learned to code as well, pretty well. And so with the dot-com boom came the dot-com bust. And I got laid off after a few rounds eventually. And it was the best thing that ever happened because it really allowed me time to rethink what I wanted to do. And it just kept coming back to veterinary medicine. And I just love animals. I couldn't get away from it. And so I decided to take some post-baccalaureate classes, and I did really well. And it was like when I actually had the interest and the focus, which I did not have in the beginning of my freshman year in college, I just fell in love with biology and all of the sciences, and to see how it related to living things. It just was a really powerful thing. And I found that I was really, really good at it when I actually had the focus and attention on it. And so I applied to vet school and I got in, and that's the story.
Wow. It's so always so interesting to me that, because I had a similar story in college, not nearly as good as yours, because veterinary science and engineering were both way beyond me. But the whole idea of not quite focusing quite as much as I could have.
Right.
And then later on kind of realizing like, oh, if I apply myself to certain things, oh, look at this. It does work out.
Exactly.
I think that's crazy but you can miss that opportunity if you're not paying attention. You
can. And I think a lot of people lose confidence in themselves when they fail at something like that, or just don't get it quite right, or they do feel weeded out and it's defeating. But I think you have to realize if you put your mind to it, you can do it, and you can find interest in it, which makes you want to do it more. You just have to sort of get to that mental point, I think, to really be focused and motivated. And it's hard to get there, but once you're there, it's like you're hooked. So, and I will say too, I mean, everything I learned. So I'm talking about things like logistics and business and finance and all of those things that I learned in college. I use those like still every day. And also that first job I had at Sapient, like I use that stuff every day to manage my team, to make us most efficient, to use technology, to build things that might not be there yet, a piece of software I could buy, like some stuff just doesn't exist yet. So, okay, I'll build it myself, That's
fantastic.
So I would say anything in computers or business, like, and I'm sure other things too, but just anything like that. Like if you're an entrepreneur, like you will use those skills for the rest of your life.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So can you tell us, what are sort of the differences that you see in animals that are treated at home rather than in a vet's office?
I would say the stress level is much less. And I think that has to do with just they have very good noses, animals, and they know what's going on when they go into a veterinarian's office. And when they're at home, they're just in their favorite place. And so they're much less stressed. And then I also think it's just that the owner is less stressed. So they're not waiting in the waiting room, or they're not worried about their dog interacting with another dog in the waiting room or whatever it is. So animals definitely pick up on that. And so I feel like that makes everybody less stressed as well. And then not to mention the veterinarian who doesn't have, 2 other exam rooms going on right now. They can just focus on this one person, this one animal, or multiple animals if there's many at the same time. But, it just really lends itself to just having a lower stress, more, I guess, intimate experience, and it's often times where we're, having a cup of tea with the with the owner and just kind of hanging out. And I think the animals just tend to be a lot less stressed in general. So that's really nice.
Yeah, you don't wind up with the back-weighted cat carrier where the cat is trying to meld into the back wall.
Right. Yeah, or sprouting things at every orifice. That happens a lot as well when they're in the carrier.
Yeah,
So,
that too. Yeah.
So one of the reasons actually we reached out to you too was because we actually utilized your services
Yeah.
with our dog Mia.
Mia, right.
Yeah. And that was Kim is not a fan of vet offices. So yeah, when it came time for Mia's goodbye, that was kind of a non-negotiable for
Yep.
us, that it had to be as because she didn't even like, she was like the dog that did not even like car rides, which was bizarre because before that we had another dog who we couldn't get out of the car.
Right.
He would actually, he wouldn't leave the car. We would have to leave him out in the truck with the windows down, and he would just hang out there for about an hour until I'd go out and say, okay, time's up, let's go.
Right.
He'd finally get out of the truck. Like, okay, fine.
Right.
But
right.
Mia hated going in the car. So even just the trip to get into the car would already stress her out,
Right.
let alone getting into a vet's office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was, it was a really good experience that we had, utilizing your services, having you come into the home. And, we couldn't imagine doing it any other way.
Yeah.
Saying those goodbyes any other way, knowing that they're comfortable in their own home, in there with their people, you know what I mean? In their
That's right.
surroundings. So yeah, we just can't say enough good things about just that experience that we had with your company.
Well, that's so nice to hear.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think euthanasia especially is just such a wonderful, it's such a wonderful way to let them go. It's just so hard. It's so stressful to make that decision and to kind of have that relief from not having to stress them out at the end to bring them in is just really, really nice. And I mean, it's such a difficult thing to let an animal go.
Absolutely.
But, you're giving them that final gift of just a low stress, no pain ending.
For sure.
To change gears, how this is obviously, everything has been different over the last year and a half with COVID. And especially, I imagine, any kind of business where you're going into people's homes. So how has the last year and a half kind of changed your business or how you do business?
Yeah. COVID threw us for a loop. I'm not going to lie. When you think about everybody is batting down the hatches and staying inside and not wanting to be around anyone. And here we are, a house call veterinary practice. Like, how's that going to keep working? How's that going to work? And so it was tough. It was really, really stressful, I think, for everybody. And, I remember having a Zoom meeting with everyone and just like breaking down and being like, I will figure out a way. If you aren't comfortable going into people's homes, like, I totally get it, but if you decide to stay, like, we will figure this out, like, we will try to figure this out. And to my staff's credit, not a single person left.
Wow.
Like, they were just so committed to the animals, so committed to the owners. And it like brings tears to my eyes even now, like, to think of the loyalty of and bravery of the staff to just keep doing this. And so we did it, we invested in PPE. I got everybody these like Arctic tundra jackets, for the winter, because we did a lot of visits outside. We did a lot of prep work. So we sent pre-exam questionnaires to try to get as much information as possible to try to have those conversations ahead of time with the owners so that we didn't have to actually spend too much time around them, and for a practice that really prides itself on like developing those true connections, like I feel like we still did a pretty good job, like we still achieved our mission. And it's really a testament to the amazing staff that we have, that they just kept going. And, despite the crazy Maine winter, despite the pandemic, I mean, it was like, they're just amazing. And so, we gratefully, and I'm knocking on wood right now, like, we haven't had any COVID transmission either from a client to us or from us to a client. And I think it's because we have such great protocols in place for things like euthanasia. Like, it is tough because, we're huggy type people, like, we like to be around people. And so to try to keep your distance is sometimes really hard. But I do feel like we still convey that empathy and we feel it, and that's all that matters, I think.
Yeah.
So it's been a tough road, and not to mention that everybody, I think, that I can think of got a pandemic puppy or some sort of animal. And so it's like, trying to fit all those people in, and this is an industry-wide problem, but like trying to fit those people in was really tough. COVID, from an industry perspective for us, really put all of our industry's issues in a pressure cooker, because all of a sudden we had less staff and we could see less people because of all the, protocols and everything like that, and less staff because people were out or people just left because they had to be home with their children or whatever. And then you have more animals there as well because of all these pandemic animals that people got. And so it was just sort of this like really stressful time. And I think we were somewhat shielded from that just because we can only be in one place at one time. And so I think we really tried to, keep our boundaries in check during COVID. And I think in the end, we still have a happy staff, like we still have people who love their jobs. And, I think we're sort of priming ourselves for growth just because we're still intact, I guess, and not a skeleton crew, et cetera.
Those boundaries are so important
for sure
when you're self-employed or a small business, just to know where your personal limitations are and what the limitations of your business are.
For sure.
To make sure that you're not burned out.
Yeah. And I am like, every day that is my goal, is to like check in and just make sure people are okay. Because if our staff is not okay, we will do a terrible job, and it's like, you can't do a good job unless you're mentally healthy,
Exactly.
And it's a really big mission of mine to just make sure everybody's okay. And not just because I don't want them to do a terrible job. It's because I want them to be okay as people. Like that is my goal, to like make this sustainable for people, make this a model that works for veterinarians and veterinary staff to be able to live a well-balanced life, still get paid well, and be able to go home when they're supposed to go home. It's not too much to ask. And I really think we need to get there as an industry. And so we're paving the way. Hopefully.
Yeah. And that just boils down to good leadership. So you have to pat yourself on the back because, it trickles down.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think you're right. And I think that I've always hired awesome people. It's like, I feel like our culture is so super important, and that is part of our culture. It's like the blood that runs through our culture here is like, take care of each other. It's the golden rule, like treat others as you want to be treated. It's not hard, but it is, it seems like it's hard for a lot of people to really live that for whatever reason in veterinary practices.
That's great. So what are some of the tips that you'd give people to help make life better for babies?
I would say, exercise is super important. So I think a lot of behavioral issues sort of stem from that. And, I know it's hard, especially in weather like this, like where it's hard to get outside, but even, 5 or 10 minutes can just really make their whole day, So really trying to get them out and get them exercised will make them better animals and happier animals. And then really to try to keep them on the lean side throughout their lives, I think is super important. I see so many hospice animals, a lot of them, pretty much any, for example, Labrador who's 13 is going to have arthritis, right? It just happens. But if you keep them lean throughout their lives, it will be less, and their lives really are improved in the long run if you try to keep them on the lean side, even though I know it's hard. But so again, exercise and just keeping a handle on the food and treats and things like that, with a balance, of course, with, having some yummy treats now and then. That's okay. But
we're in trouble, Todd.
Kim and I just a little behind the scenes. Kim and I are looking at each other because our cat. Well, no, we're doing all right.
We're doing better.
We got a cat a couple of years ago. Or I got a cat a couple of years ago, and she was morbidly obese
when we adopted her.
And we've managed.
She was a cartoon figure.
Yes, she was. She was a bowling ball with a tail and a head. Really,
she literally was.
And
oh my gosh.
And so we've managed to put her on a diet, which she's not happy about.
Right.
And she's down. She's eliminated about a third of her body weight at this point.
Oh, that's awesome. Good job.
But she is the laziest cat
She
on
will
the
not
planet.
exercise. The only exercise she does is to chase a treat. If
Yes,
you throw it
I
down the
know.
hallway. That's the only way we can get her to exercise.
And
Well,
even
that's
that,
good at least. I mean, so they
After a
do,
couple-
there are lots of cool things that are, I don't know if you've heard of these things, but like there's lots of great ways for cats to like get their exercise in. And one of them is this feeder where you actually put their food in these little mice and you hide
Ooh.
them throughout your house. So it's like they have to work to like get their food. So for very food motivated animals, it can be actually very helpful because it encourages them to like have to forage for their food. So anyway, there's lots of cool little things, laser pointers to try to get them to run around. And
yeah,
She don't buy that.
yeah,
No.
she's not cool with that, right? She's too smart.
She's very much the queen of the castle and just
Yeah,
bring
it sounds like
bring
it.
it to me, my subjects. However, it
She
is
is.
funny that you mentioned it kind of sounds like basically what every human should be doing, like get a little exercise.
Right, I know.
Be on the lean side. And it's like, so basically what we should be doing for ourselves
Exactly.
is what
Yes.
we ought to be doing for the pets.
That's
Totally
a
makes
good
sense.
mantra. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So one of the questions we always like to ask, because usually is a very different answer for every person, is how do you define success, either personally or professionally?
I think it's having happy people around you and happy people that you're serving. So
Mhm.
I think if you are working with people who like what they're doing and like working with you, and then you have your customers who like working with you as well and appreciate your value, then I think that is success. And I think ultimately having some sort of meaning in both the people around you, their lives, as well as the people that you're serving, that you're having some sort of impact and helping them in some way. I think that is a measure of success for me.
Yeah, for sure. So we are also, this is selfish, we're inspiration junkies. So we do like to ask this question. Who or what inspires you?
That's a good question. And I know this is sort of maybe trite, but my mom. And the reason for that is because she was, I grew up in a great household and we had 5 kids. And my dad is a wonderful dad. He did have to travel a lot. So a lot of the times my mom was home alone with all of us. And she also ran a school and basically built the school from the ground up. And so she really did an amazing job at the balance, somehow she built this amazing school, but then also was always there for us kids. And so for me, as my children are raised, and grow up, I want them to see a mother who can do both things, and hopefully both things pretty well. So be able to have a very satisfying career life and then also have a very satisfying home life. And I mean, granted, some days I do not do either thing well, but it's like, when it comes to being inspired, it's like, what would mom do, in this situation? And so it just really helps with the balance. And I think just also wanting to be a good person and to try to, leave my mark in some way, like she left on me. I think that's really been my inspiration. And I also, there's been so many people that have inspired me. And I think it's always the people that are just doing things a little bit differently, and just going for it and not really caring about the no's, but just keep trucking along anyway. And knowing that, they might have something cool going on. And I think those are the people that I just love following and love learning about and listening to.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Well, Deirdre, thank you so much for taking your time out to talk with us today. And it's been great getting a chance to think about puppies and kittens and things like that as we're talking, because I don't know about Kim, but that's all I've been thinking about, honestly.
Right.
But it's such a great service that you provide.
Yeah, it really
and
is.
I know that your other clients are probably just as satisfied and thankful as we are for your service. So I'll be sure to put your business website and phone numbers and all that stuff in our show notes so that people can get a hold of you. And thank you once again. And we wish you great success adding new vets and your growth going into the rest of this year.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Once again, we'd like to thank our sponsor and encourage you to check them out through the link in the show notes. And thank you again for listening.